I am Julian. I am 36 years old. And exactly 11 months ago, at 5:37 in the morning, my own parents executed a calculated, terrifying plan to wipe out my entire life savings while I was fast asleep in my bed. I woke up to a chilling text message from my bank, called my mother in an absolute panic, and my father picked up the phone to tell me, in that slow, intensely patronizing voice of his, that they had legally taken over my accounts for my own good. They said I was mentally unstable. They said they were doing what any responsible, loving family would do when a child was struggling. They told me to just let them manage my money, to stop overreacting, and to let the family handle the heavy lifting. In that exact moment, they were actively trying to steal over $500,000 from me to fund my older brother's luxurious lifestyle. But there is one massive thing my parents did not know. They did not know that my grandfather had warned me about this exact moment 16 years ago. And right now, as I speak to you today, the people who raised me are sitting in a federal prison, serving years behind bars for multiple felonies, while I am safely drinking coffee on my back porch. Before I tell you exactly how I outsmarted my own family and put my parents behind bars, hit that like button if you believe that sharing blood does not give anyone the right to abuse, manipulate, or steal from you. And please, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Your support means everything to me. Now, let's go back to the morning everything in my life shattered and rearranged itself into a completely different reality. The text on my phone came in at exactly 5:37 in the morning. I was still deep in that heavy, disorienting half-sleep that only comes after working 3 back-to-back 12-hour shifts as a charge nurse in a high-stress cardiac unit. The house on Wren Street was completely silent. My cat, an old orange tabby who has been my only roommate for the past 5 years, was pressed heavily against the back of my knees. The vibration of the phone on my wooden nightstand sounded unnaturally loud in the dark room. I reached out blindly, squinting against the harsh brightness of the screen. The message was directly from my primary bank's automated alert system. It was not a marketing text. It was not a low balance warning. It was just one single, terrifying, clinical line. It read, "Your account access has been temporarily suspended pending verification of recent authorization changes." I read it 3 times before my exhausted brain actually processed the meaning of the words. Suspended. Authorization changes. The air in my bedroom suddenly felt very thin. I sat up so fast that the cat slid off the edge of the bed and hit the hardwood floor with a soft, disgruntled thump. My hands were suddenly clumsy and numb as I unlocked my phone and tapped the familiar blue and white banking app icon. The screen loaded for what felt like an eternity. Then, a massive red banner appeared, dominating the entire top section of my screen. Access denied. Right below it, in smaller, deeply impersonal letters, it instructed me to contact my local branch for immediate assistance. I need you to truly understand the gravity of what I was looking at. This was not a standard checking account with a few $100s left over from my last paycheck. This was a trust fund that had been sitting securely under my legal name for 11 solid years. $520,000. My entire inheritance. My absolute financial safety net. The money that was supposed to protect my future, ensure I never ended up destitute, and give me a foundation in a world that is becoming increasingly impossible to survive in. It was frozen, completely and totally locked down. My heart started hammering against my ribs with a violent rhythm. The fear was cold and immediate. The very first thing I did was call my mother. I know exactly how that sounds. Sounds completely irrational, naive, and foolish now. That was my first and most profound mistake of the day, and I am telling you that up front so you do not spend the rest of the story judging my initial reaction. I did not immediately call a ruthless lawyer, or the bank's central fraud department, or the police. I called her because, in that split second of sheer primal panic, some deeply broken, hopeful part of me still believed my mother was actually a mother. I wanted her to answer the phone, hear the genuine terror in my voice, and say, "Oh, sweetheart, that is terrible. Put your shoes on, I am coming over, and we will figure this out together." She picked up on the second ring. She was entirely wide awake. That was the very first undeniable red flag of the morning. My mother, Beatrice, does not get up before 7 o'clock. She never has. Not once in my entire 36 years of existence. She considers early mornings to be a personal insult. Yet here she was, answering the phone instantly at 5:40 a.m., her voice completely devoid of sleep. "Julian," she said. "Not good morning. Not honey. Not what is wrong. Why are you calling so early? Just my name." She said it flatly, coldly, and with a heavy weight, exactly the way she used to say it when I was an 8-year-old boy and she was about to sit me down to explain why my feelings were invalid and I was overreacting to something. I gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. "Mom, my bank account is frozen. The trust account. Do you know anything about this?" There was a pause on the line, but it was not the pause of someone who was confused, shocked, or trying to process new information. It was the deeply calculated, strategic pause of someone standing at a crossroads, deciding exactly which version of a heavily rehearsed script they were going to deploy. "Your father and I had a very long, serious conversation last week with a wealth advisor," she said smoothly, her tone eerily calm. "We have been extremely worried about you for quite a while now. The severe stress at the hospital, the messy breakup with Maya. We thought it was finally time for us to step in and help you manage things before you made a mistake." I cannot adequately describe the exact physical sensation that hit my stomach when those words registered. It was not shock. The pure shock came much later, when I saw the actual evidence. This was something much quieter, much darker, and much older. It was the heavy, suffocating feeling of every single conversation I had ever had with her since I was a child. Every single time she had taken something of mine and called it borrowing. Every time she had dismissed my boundaries by saying, "We are a family and family shares." In that devastating moment, I finally realized exactly what I was to her. I was not a beloved son. I was not a person with agency. I was simply a checking account with a pulse, carrying a personality she had never particularly liked or respected. "What did you do?" I demanded. My voice dropped an octave. It was no longer a question. It was a demand for a confession. I heard the sound of shuffling in the background. Then my father's voice echoed through the receiver. "Is that him? Put him on speaker right now." My mother clicked the button. My father, Winston, began to speak. He used that incredibly calm, agonizingly slow, deliberate voice he always uses when he wants to pretend he is the only sane, reasonable person in a room full of hysterics. My father is a retired insurance adjuster. He spent 40 solid years sitting across desks from desperate people, telling them exactly why their legitimate claims were being denied, using a tone specifically designed to make them feel stupid, unreasonable, and small. He was using that exact same professional weapon on his own son. "Julian, listen to me closely. We did what any responsible, loving parents would do," he said softly, the condescension practically dripping from the speaker. "We got a formal power of attorney drawn up. There is an official doctor's letter on file. You have been struggling severely, and we are completely within our legal rights as your next of kin to act on your behalf when you are not in a position to make sound financial decisions. You need to calm down. This is for your protection." "What doctor?" I snapped, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What doctor on earth signed a legal letter saying I cannot manage my own money? "I haven't seen a doctor in a year." My mother immediately jumped back in, her tone artificially sweet and dripping with fake concern. "Sweetheart, please, you do not need to worry yourself with the legal details. Let us handle the heavy lifting. You have been so incredibly emotional lately. You are just not thinking clearly right now." I had not seen my mother in 8 months. I had not spoken to her for more than 4 continuous minutes since the Thanksgiving dinner disaster last year. She knew absolutely nothing about my daily life. She did not know what I ate for breakfast. She did not know if I was emotional, happy, or sad. She did not even know the name of the hospital supervisor I reported to every single day. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I did not say goodbye. I did not argue. I just ended the call, cutting her off mid-sentence. I sat on the edge of my unmade bed in my pajamas, the room completely quiet again, and I started shaking. I mean violent, uncontrollable, full-body shaking. My teeth were actually chattering. I allowed myself to shake for exactly 90 seconds. And then, like a switch flipping in a breaker box, the shaking stopped. Something icy, sharp, and resolute moved into the empty space where the fear and panic had just been. I picked up the phone, found the direct local number for my bank branch, and aggressively bypassed the automated system until I got a human being. When the representative answered, I did not ask for help. I demanded to speak to the branch manager immediately. I told the woman on the line that I would be physically standing at the front doors when they unlocked at 9 o'clock, and I fully expected the manager to be waiting for me. I clearly and loudly stated the words fraud and elder financial exploitation, even though I am only 36. I told her this was my account, my money, and I had absolutely not authorized a single change or transfer. The woman on the line, God bless her competence, immediately understood the tone in my voice. Sir, I am locking and flagging your account right now for the manager's immediate, top priority review. Please bring 2 forms of government ID with you. I did not text my parents back. I did not try to reason with them. I got into the shower and let the scalding water hit my back. I got out, dried off, and put on the sharp navy blazer I usually reserve for hostile disciplinary meetings with hospital administration. I put on the small gold earrings my grandfather had given me for my college graduation. I grabbed my keys, walked out of my house, got into my car, and drove toward the bank. The drive to the bank was when the initial shock finally burned off and the stark, terrifying clarity began to set in. I was driving down Route 9, passing the old neon-lit diner where my father used to take me on Saturday mornings when I was a kid, and I started running the timeline of events in my head. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, and the picture they formed was utterly monstrous. To truly comprehend the sheer, audacious magnitude of this betrayal, and why my parents felt so entitled to my life savings, you have to understand the history of this money. You have to understand grandfather Silas. Silas was my mother's father. He was a deeply pragmatic, fiercely hardworking man who had built a successful hardware business from nothing. He saw through people faster and more accurately than anyone I have ever known. More importantly, he saw exactly who my mother, Beatrice, was even when the rest of the neighborhood and our extended family thought she was a devoted, picture-perfect matriarch. When I was 19 years old, I was drowning. I was working double shifts at a local diner, coming home smelling like stale grease, just to pay for my community college nursing courses. My parents, who lived in a massive house in a gated community, consistently refused to help me with my college fund. Instead, they kept borrowing my meager paychecks. They would tell me they needed a few $100s to cover a sudden spike in the mortgage, or that a mysterious, urgent medical bill had arrived. As a naive, desperate teenager who just wanted the approval of a functional family, I handed the money over. I almost dropped out of nursing school that year because I could not afford the basic required textbooks. My parents never paid me back. Not a single dime. Grandfather Silas saw all of it. He watched me work myself to the bone while my mother bought new designer handbags and hosted lavish dinner parties. He never confronted my mother directly about it. He knew that arguing with Beatrice was a pointless endeavor. She would simply twist the narrative, play the victim, and make you look like the aggressor. So he took a different route. He quietly went to his estate lawyer. He set up a robust trust fund, explicitly ensuring my mother's name was absolutely nowhere near the legal paperwork. I will never forget the crisp autumn afternoon. He handed me the thick manila envelope in his kitchen. The house smelled faintly of stale pipe tobacco and lemon furniture polish. He sat me down at the worn wooden table, looked me dead in the eye, and slid the documents toward me. "Julian, this is yours," he said, his voice grave and uncompromising. "Do not let anyone talk you out of it. Do not let anyone tell you they need it more than you do. Because I promise you, Julian, they will try." He died the following year when I was 20. I am 36 now, and in those 16 years, I had touched that trust fund exactly twice. I used it once to completely wipe out the crippling remainder of my student loans, and I used it once to put down a solid 20% deposit on my modest, little brick house on Wren Street. I never flaunted the money. I never bought expensive designer clothes or took luxury vacations to Europe. I worked my grueling 12-hour shifts at the hospital, contributed maximum amounts to my 401k, paid my own mortgage, bought my own groceries, and lived a quiet, fiercely independent life. But my family, they lived in an entirely different, incredibly expensive reality. My older brother, Harrison, is 41 years old. He is the quintessential golden child. The beautiful, charismatic boy who could do absolutely no wrong in my parents' eyes. Harrison has been conveniently between things for the better part of 6 years. He fancies himself an entrepreneur, which is just a polite, socially acceptable way of saying he starts failing businesses using other people's capital. He and his wife, Penelope, live in a sprawling 4-bedroom house located in a neighborhood with a notoriously strict HOA. My parents quietly helped them secure the down payment for that house. They drive a gleaming Porsche Cayenne that my parents helped finance. Their 2 young children attend an incredibly exclusive private school, and every single August, like clockwork, the exorbitant tuition mysteriously gets paid via a massive check drawn directly from my mother's personal account. Harrison and I do not have a relationship. He has called me exactly twice in the last 12 months. The first time was to ask, with thinly veiled annoyance, what time I was showing up for the annual Easter dinner. The second time was in April. He called to ask if I would formally co-sign a high-interest loan for his daughter's advanced private tutoring. I said no. I was perfectly polite about it. I sent the rejection in a text message. I did not offer a lengthy explanation or apologize. I simply stated that I do not co-sign financial documents. As I drove toward the bank, the sunlight hitting the dashboard, the puzzle pieces began violently snapping together in my mind. The realization hit me so hard I felt physically nauseous. Harrison had been the one to suggest the trust. I knew it in my gut, the same exact way you recognize the sharp, acrid smell of smoke before you see the actual fire. Harrison was draining my parents completely dry, and the limitless bank of mom and dad was finally hitting the bottom of the barrel. They desperately needed a massive, untraceable influx of cash to maintain their grand illusion of wealth and superiority. And there I was, the quiet, single, hardworking nurse with over $500,000 sitting untouched in a high-yield account. But how on earth did they build their legal narrative? How did they legally justify taking absolute control of a 36-year-old grown man's finances? They needed a documented, compelling reason to claim I was mentally incompetent. They needed evidence. That was where my Aunt Clara entered the picture. Clara is my mother's older sister. For the past few months, Clara had been consistently texting me, acting like the supportive, cool, understanding aunt. She asked about my grueling hours at the hospital, my ongoing renovations on the house, and, most importantly, my romantic life. 11 months ago, my girlfriend Maya and I broke up. It was a completely clean, mutual split. We just wanted entirely different things in life. It was sad, but it was not a tragedy. I had briefly mentioned the breakup to Clara over a long phone call, feeling a rare sense of relief that I finally had a family member I could vent to without being judged. I did not know Clara was taking detailed notes. I did not know she was acting as a spy, reporting every heavy sigh, every moment of vulnerability, and every complaint about my demanding hospital shifts straight back to my mother. My mother took a perfectly normal, albeit sad, breakup, combined it with the standard, everyday stress of working in a cardiac unit, and maliciously spun it into a terrifying narrative of acute mental health distress. They did not just wake up one random Tuesday morning and decide to commit a felony. They had been observing me for months, gathering intimate data, weaponizing my own private conversations to construct a legally binding lie. I thought about every single time my mother had coldly called me dramatic. Every time my father had used his insurance adjuster voice to tell me my perfectly normal feelings were invalid. Every time Harrison smirked at family Thanksgiving dinners when my parents loudly praised his latest failed startup venture while completely ignoring my hard-earned promotion to charge nurse. They had not been ignoring me. They had been actively rehearsing. They had been laying the psychological and legal groundwork for a performance they intended to execute flawlessly. They honestly believed that because I was quiet, because I generally avoided loud confrontations, and because I was inherently decent, that I would just roll over and surrender. They thought my decency was a leash they could pull. They thought I would value the toxic illusion of family unity more than my own financial survival. They were profoundly, disastrously wrong. I pulled into the bank parking lot at exactly 8:47 a.m. The lot was almost entirely empty. I parked my car, turned off the engine, and sat in the profound silence of the cabin. I closed my eyes and did the one specific thing my grandfather had taught me to do before I walked into any important, life-altering situation. I took 3 very slow, incredibly deep breaths, filling my lungs completely, and I consciously decided in advance exactly what I was not going to do. I was not going to cry. I was not going to apologize for defending my property. I was absolutely not going to use the cowardly word misunderstanding. And above all else, I was not going to call my parents from the parking lot to give them one final chance to explain themselves. The time for explanations was over. The time for consequences had arrived. At exactly 9 o'clock, I heard the heavy locks on the glass doors click open. I stepped out of my car, adjusted my navy blazer, and walked inside. The interior of the bank was quiet, smelling of strong coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. I walked straight past the velvet ropes and approached the main teller counter. I pulled my driver's license and my passport out of my jacket and placed them firmly on the polished marble. The manager was expecting me. His name was Mr. Thornton, a meticulous man in his late 50s with silver hair, a soft handshake, and an incredibly careful, analytical face. He did not offer platitudes. He simply picked up my IDs, verified my face, and escorted me into a private, glass-walled office situated right off the main lobby. He closed the heavy door, shutting out the ambient noise of the bank, and gestured for me to sit down. He walked around his large mahogany desk, sat in his leather chair, and immediately turned his large computer monitor completely around so I had a clear, unobstructed view of the screen. "Julian," Mr. Thornton began, his voice low and serious, "I want to show you exactly what we are looking at. We received this via our central processing hub." On the glowing screen was a scanned PDF document. The bold header across the top read, "General Durable Power of Attorney." It was dated exactly 4 days ago. I leaned forward, my eyes scanning the dense legal text. The document granted Winston and Beatrice complete, unfettered access to all my financial assets, the ability to buy or sell real estate in my name, and the power to liquidate my investment portfolios. I scrolled down to the very bottom of the second page. There, sitting perfectly on the designated signature line, was my name, Julian. I stared at the black ink on the screen. A strange, eerie calm washed over me. I had never seen that signature before in my entire life. "It is a decent attempt," I said, my voice unervingly steady. I pointed at the screen. "But look at the J. Whoever traced this used a standard, looping cursive J. It is generic." I pulled my driver's license across the desk and tapped the signature encased in the plastic. "Mr. Thornton," I started putting a sharp, distinct horizontal dash across the top of my J when I was 13 years old because I thought it made it look sophisticated. I have never, not once in my adult life, signed a legal document, a lease, or a check without that exact dash. That signature on your screen is a blatant forgery. The J belongs to someone who practiced it from a photograph of a Christmas card or a quick thank you note. Mr. Thornton exhaled slowly, resting his hands on the desk. "I believe you, Julian, but the signature is only the beginning. I want to walk you through the rest of the file." He clicked his mouse and scrolled to the next attachment. Attached to the power of attorney was a formal, heavily credentialed physician's letter. The letterhead looked incredibly professional, featuring a modern logo and clinic address. The letter itself was dated 3 days earlier. I leaned in closer and read the text. It stated, in thick, authoritative medical jargon, that I had been formally evaluated in a clinical setting and was currently experiencing acute mental health distress consistent with a severe inability to manage personal financial affairs at this time. It explicitly and urgently recommended that an immediate family member be granted temporary, sweeping authority over all my accounts to prevent self-sabotage. It was signed with a flourish by a Dr. Ainsley Pruitt, who was listed as a board-certified psychiatrist in private practice in a town located about 2 hours north of where I currently live. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh that echoed in the small office. Mr. Thornton, I have never been to a psychiatrist in my entire life. I have absolutely no history of mental illness. I have never even driven through that town up north. And I have absolutely no idea who Dr. Ainsley Pruitt is. We strongly suspected as much, Mr. Thornton replied, his tone lowering to a confidential whisper. There is a direct phone number listed right here on the letterhead. My fraud department called it yesterday afternoon to verify the credentials. It went straight to a generic, automated voicemail with no name attached. We left an urgent, detailed message. No one ever returned the call. He clicked another tab on his browser. Now look at this. This is the fax header. He pointed a pen to the string of tiny, pixelated numbers running across the very top margin of the document. This medical letter was faxed into our central processing center from a number with a 717 area code. I had my security team look up the number this morning. It is not a doctor's office, Julian. It is a public UPS store. Specifically, a UPS store located in a strip mall in that exact same town 2 hours north. My hands went completely cold. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the sheer, terrifying precision and malice of it. They hadn't just printed a fake document off at home and mailed it in on a whim. They had brainstormed. They had planned a coordinated attack. They had intentionally driven 2 hours out of town. They had paid a few dollars to use a public fax machine at a random strip mall to create a paper trail that looked legitimate to a bank processor. They had committed a premeditated, highly organized assault on my life and my future. There is one more thing, Mr. Thornton said quietly, and this is the piece of evidence that officially moves this from a suspicious transaction to a criminal investigation. He minimized the PDF and opened a hidden system properties window. Whenever a digital PDF document is created from a physical scan, the software automatically embeds hidden data directly into the file. It is called metadata. It tracks the exact date, the precise time, and the specific hardware device used to create the original digital file. He turned the monitor a fraction of an inch closer to me, highlighting a specific line of code. This particular PDF was created on a high-end home printer and scanner combination. The device is registered to a specific home Wi-Fi network. The owner's name is hard-coded right here in the embedded metadata. I looked at the line of text he was highlighting. Registered device owner, Harrison V.IT was my brother. My older brother. I sat back heavily in the leather chair. The silence in the office was absolute. It felt like all the oxygen had been violently sucked out of the room. I felt a profound, heavy quiet settle over my mind. For my entire life, my family had been this constant, loud, oppressive buzzing in my head. The subtle criticisms, the heavy expectations, my mother's exasperated sighs, my father's condescending lectures, Harrison's smug, entitled superiority. It had always been there, a constant low hum drowning out my own instincts. And in that split second, staring directly at my brother's name embedded on a forged federal banking document, the buzzing completely stopped. The hum died, and in the sudden, beautiful quiet, I could finally hear myself think. They weren't family. They were parasites. Mr. Thornton folded his hands perfectly on the desk. Julian, I need to ask you a very serious, life-altering question. Do you want to formally file a fraud claim today? Because if you say yes, this ceases to be a private family dispute. This immediately becomes a serious criminal matter. Forgery on a federally insured banking instrument is a major felony. Submitting a fraudulent medical document to seize assets is another felony. If your parents and your brother knowingly participated in this scheme together, they are looking at federal conspiracy charges. I have to ask you to take a minute and be absolutely sure. This is your family. I looked at him. I did not need a minute. I thought of grandfather Silas. I thought of the 16 years I spent working night shifts, eating cheap meals, saving every single penny while they lived in absolute luxury funded by my mother's endless enabling. "Mr. Thornton," I said, my voice ringing with total clarity. "My grandfather set up this account specifically so that my mother could not touch it. He told me the day he gave it to me that she would eventually try. He has been dead for 16 years, and today he was proven absolutely right. I am completely sure." He didn't blink. He just nodded once, picked up the heavy black phone on his desk, and dialed a quick internal extension. "Theo, bring me the complete federal fraud packet, and call the non-emergency police line. Tell them we need an officer dispatched immediately for a high-value elder financial exploitation and forgery report." While we sat in the glass office waiting for the police to arrive, the silence was broken by a sudden, aggressive buzzing. My phone, which I had placed face down on the polished mahogany desk, began to vibrate wildly against the wood. Bzzz. An incoming call from my mother. I watched the screen light up, then go dark. Bzzz. A call from my father. I ignored it. Bzzz. A text message notification popped up. It was from Harrison. I picked up the phone just enough to read the preview on the lock screen. Harrison's text read, "Julian, Mom is in absolute tears over here. She is worried sick about you. Can you please just call her back? This whole situation is getting completely out of hand. Stop acting crazy and let us help you." It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. If I had still been the weak, overly emotional, guilt-ridden son they desperately needed me to be, that single text message would have broken my resolve. I would have felt a crushing wave of guilt for making my elderly mother cry. I would have called them back immediately, apologizing for being difficult, and handed over the keys to my life. Instead, reading those words, I felt nothing but utter, profound disgust. The sheer audacity of Harrison sitting in his expensive house, typing out a message calling me crazy, while his name was literally hard-coded into the metadata of a forged felony document sitting 2 feet away from me. I put the phone on silent, flipped it face down again, and shoved it deep into my jacket pocket. 10 minutes later, the door to the office opened. The police officer who walked in was exactly what I needed in that moment. Her name was Officer Ramona. She was a woman roughly my age, wearing a sharp, impeccably ironed uniform. She had her dark hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, and she carried a physical, battered notebook that she actually wrote in with a pen. She exuded a calm, focused, no-nonsense authority. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me like a professional assessing a crime scene. She sat down in the chair next to me and listened to my entire story for 30 uninterrupted minutes. She didn't offer fake sympathy. She didn't interrupt to tell me how sorry she was that my family was so toxic. She just took methodical, detailed notes. She carefully reviewed the printed copy of the forged power of attorney. She scrutinized the fake psychiatrist's letter, noting the incorrect medical terminology. She looked at the printed copy of the fax header from the UPS store and the highlighted metadata showing Harrison's name. She asked Mr. Thornton, in a crisp, authoritative tone, if the bank would legally release all these documents to the police department with a signed release form from me. I signed the release immediately, my hand completely steady, and Mr. Thornton left the room to make certified, stamped copies for her file. Officer Ramona closed her notebook, clicked her pen shut, and looked directly into my eyes. "Mr. Julian," she said, her voice dropping to a serious, deeply tactical register, "I need you to think carefully about this next question. Are your parents likely to physically come to this bank branch today?" I stopped. I thought about the frantic phone calls I had intentionally ignored. I pictured my mother pacing back and forth in her pristine kitchen, wearing her plush pink robe, waiting desperately for the prodigal son to call back and surrender. I pictured my father running out of patience, his anger boiling over because he was losing control of the narrative. I pictured Harrison texting them from the sidelines, urging them to escalate the situation before the bank flagged the account permanently. "Yes," I said smoothly, leaning forward. "If they think their plan is failing, or if they suspect I am putting up resistance, they will absolutely come down here. They will come to perform." Officer Ramona tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. Perform. My mother will walk through those front glass doors, and she will immediately start to cry, I explained, detailing the exact choreography of the abuse I had survived for decades. She will use a very soft, gentle, trembling voice. She will tell your tellers that I have always been mentally unstable. She will say I am currently having a severe psychological breakdown. She will attempt to produce those fake documents as evidence of her authority. She will be incredibly, terrifyingly convincing. I am explicitly telling you this right now, Officer Ramona, so that when she does it, you remember that I predicted her exact behavior in advance. Officer Ramona stared at me for a long, calculating moment. She was measuring my absolute composure against the mountain of forensic evidence sitting on the desk. Finally, a small, tight, incredibly dangerous smile appeared on her face. Thank you, she said simply. That is very helpful information. I am going to stay right here in the building. She stood up, adjusted her utility belt, walked out of the glass office, and positioned herself perfectly out of sight in the back employee hallway, waiting silently in the shadows. Mr. Thornton returned with the freshly printed, thick stack of fraud paperwork. I picked up the pen and began the tedious, empowering process of freezing every single account I had with that institution. I was closing them all down, severing the financial arteries, and reopening them under entirely new, randomized account numbers. We were setting up new, complex security questions, biometric bypass codes, and a strict, mandatory verbal password that my parents could not possibly guess in a million years because it was a direct quote my grandfather had said to me the week before he died. I was halfway through signing the final release form when I heard it. The heavy, distinctive, mechanical hum of the bank's front automatic doors sliding open. I didn't turn my head. I didn't need to. I could feel the immediate change in the air pressure of the room. The storm had finally arrived, and they had absolutely no idea they were walking straight into a trap. I was sitting in Mr. Thornton's glass-walled office, the heavy stack of fraud paperwork resting under my hands, when the main entrance doors of the bank slid open with a soft, mechanical hum. I did not turn my head. I did not need to visually confirm what was happening. I could feel the immediate shift in the atmosphere of the room. It was the exact same feeling you get when a severe thunderstorm is about to break. The air pressure drops, the hairs on your arms stand up, and everything goes dead quiet. I kept my eyes fixed squarely on the blue ink of my new, secure account numbers. But through the reflection in the polished glass wall of the office, I watched them walk in. At exactly 10:40 in the morning, my mother, Beatrice, walked into the bank lobby. She was not rushing. She was not frantic. She moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a woman who had spent her entire life curating her public image. She was wearing a thick, expensive cream-colored sweater and her good pearl earrings. Her hair was perfectly styled. She had explicitly dressed for the occasion. This was not the outfit of a mother who had thrown on clothes in a blind panic because her son was having a medical emergency. This was a costume. It was the carefully chosen uniform of a wealthy, respectable woman who had been tragically burdened with the awful task of handling a delicate family situation. Winston was exactly 2 steps behind her. He was wearing his standard golf slacks and a pressed button-down shirt. He had his hands clasped behind his back, projecting an aura of quiet, long-suffering authority. Harrison and Penelope were absolutely nowhere to be seen. They had sent the parents in to do the dirty work. That single visual confirmed everything I needed to know about the division of labor in their little criminal enterprise. Harrison was the mastermind who needed the cash, but he was far too cowardly to risk his own neck on the front lines. He knew Beatrice could cry on command, and he knew Winston could intimidate any low-level bank employee into submission. I watched the reflection in the glass as my mother glided directly up to the main teller counter. The teller on duty was a young woman with a brass name tag that read Camille. Camille was 22 years old, completely unassuming, and exactly the kind of young, inexperienced worker my parents loved to bulldoze. I could hear my mother's voice carrying through the quiet lobby, slipping effortlessly through the gaps in the glass walls. "Good morning," Beatrice said. She used her gentle voice. It was a soft, trembling, incredibly musical tone that she usually reserved for speaking to pastors at church or to neighbors when she wanted to solicit sympathy. "I am so sorry to bother you, dear. I am here about my son, Julian. He has been having a very, very difficult time lately, and we are simply trying to help him manage some urgent financial matters before he hurts himself. I believe he might actually be in the building today, and I must warn you, he is just not himself right now." It was a flawless performance. If I had been a stranger standing in line, I would have felt a profound wave of pity for this elegant, exhausted mother trying to save her deranged child. She delivered the lines with exactly the right amount of hesitation, the perfect slight catch in her throat. Camille, the young teller, did not miss a beat. She had been fully briefed by Mr. Thornton just 15 minutes prior. She looked at my mother with a perfectly neutral, professional expression. "Ma'am, can you give me just one moment, please?" Camille said politely. Camille turned around and walked calmly toward the back employee corridor. My mother leaned against the marble counter, turning slightly to look at my father. Winston placed a heavy, reassuring hand on the small of her back. They looked like a united front. They looked victorious. They honestly believed they were about to walk out of those sliding glass doors with a cashier's check for $500,000. And then the heavy wooden door to the back corridor opened. It was not Camille who walked back out. Officer Ramona stepped into the main lobby, her heavy-duty boots making no sound on the carpet. She was in full uniform, her radio crackling softly on her shoulder, her hands resting easily on her utility belt. She walked calmly, with terrifying purpose, straight toward the teller counter. I watched my mother's face in the reflection of the glass. I watched the exact microsecond her brain registered the presence of law enforcement. Her face did a thing. It was a specific muscular twitch that I had seen my entire life but never had a proper name for until that very moment. It was the half-second, frantic mechanical adjustment between one completely fabricated performance and the next. The mask of the weary, capable manager vanished. In less than a heartbeat, she deployed the next sequence. Confusion, deep hurt, maternal panic. "Officer?" my mother gasped, pressing a manicured hand to her chest. "Oh, thank goodness you are here. My son is in the building, isn't he? He has been in a real, severe psychological crisis. We have complete legal documentation from his primary doctor. His father and I have full power of attorney. We are just trying to help him get the medical care he desperately needs." Officer Ramona stopped a few feet away from them. She did not smile. She did not offer a comforting nod. She just looked at them with the cold, dead-eyed stare of a predator assessing a very slow, very stupid meal. "Ma'am, can I please see your government identification?" Officer Ramona asked, her voice completely devoid of emotion. My mother's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. She unclasped her designer handbag and handed over her driver's license. My father stepped up right beside her, keeping his hand firmly on her lower back, painting the perfect picture of a worried, protective husband. He handed his ID over as well. Officer Ramona took the 2 plastic cards, examined them closely, and then looked back up. "Ma'am." "Sir," Officer Ramona said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent lobby, "I need to ask you both to come with me to the back room right now. We have some serious questions about a legal document that was filed with this bank earlier this week." My father puffed out his chest, completely unbothered. His ego was so massive, so impenetrable, that he fundamentally believed he could talk his way out of a federal investigation just by using a deep voice. "Of course, officer," Winston said smoothly, projecting total transparency. "We have absolutely nothing to hide from you. We are his parents. We are legally authorized to be here." Officer Ramona gestured toward the secure back hallway. My parents turned and began to walk. Their path took them directly past the large glass windows of Mr. Thornton's office, where I was sitting. I did not hide. I did not look down at my papers. I sat up perfectly straight, squared my shoulders in my navy blazer, and I looked directly at them. My mother turned her head as she walked past. Her eyes met mine through the thick glass. I want to be incredibly clear about what happened in that specific second. She did not stop walking. She did not gasp. She did not say my name. She did not look at me with anger or fear or even maternal disappointment. Her eyes moved over my face with the exact same casual, unbothered indifference you might use when glancing at an old, outdated magazine sitting on a table in a dentist's waiting room. My father did not look at me at all. He kept his eyes locked straight ahead, his chin raised, completely ignoring my existence. I want to tell you plainly, right now, that this was the exact moment my old life permanently ended. It was not the jarring text message at dawn. It was not the terrifying phone call. It was this. It was watching my own mother walk past me in a bank lobby, flanked by a police officer, heading toward an interrogation room to steal my life savings, and not even breaking her stride. I felt the last, lingering, pathetic thread of hope inside my chest snap. The fantasy of a loving family died right there on the bank lobby carpet. And in its place, a cold, unbreakable armor forged itself around my heart. I picked up my pen, looked back down at the documents, and continued securing my future. What actually happened in that sterile, windowless back room, I learned later in pieces. I read the detailed police reports. I read the official court transcripts. And I sat over coffee with Officer Ramona months after the fact, listening to her describe the sheer, blinding arrogance of my parents. They were so completely accustomed to bulldozing everyone in their path, so used to their lies being accepted as gospel, that they had committed the ultimate cardinal sin of a criminal conspiracy. They had not bothered to thoroughly rehearse their story. They honestly believed that because I was the target, and because they were the authoritative parents, the police would simply bow to their social status and hand over the money. Officer Ramona separated them immediately. She put Winston in one room and Beatrice in another. This is standard police procedure, designed to prevent suspects from corroborating their lies. Ramona sat down with my mother first. She laid the printed copy of the forged power of attorney on the metal table. She asked Beatrice, very politely, to explain the circumstances of the signature. My mother, leaning heavily into her sweet, maternal persona, claimed that I had come over to her house, broken down crying in her kitchen, and voluntarily signed the document in front of her. Ramona nodded and asked for the exact date. My mother confidently provided a specific date from the previous week. Ramona then left the room, walked into the adjacent office where my father was waiting, and asked him the exact same question. Winston, puffing his chest and trying to dominate the interview, confidently gave a completely different date. He was off by 2 full days. The foundation was already cracking, but Ramona pushed harder. She brought out the fake psychiatrist's letter. She asked Beatrice about Dr. Ainsley Pruitt. My mother smiled warmly and said the doctor was a very close, trusted family friend who had spoken with me extensively over the phone. Ramona asked for the doctor's physical clinic address. My mother seamlessly rattled off the name of the town located 2 hours north. She had clearly memorized the name of the town, but her description of the clinic was incredibly vague because she had obviously never set foot in it. Ramona walked back to Winston. She asked him about the doctor. She asked my father to simply spell the doctor's name for the official police record. Winston, whose ego would never allow him to admit he did not know something, confidently spelled the name completely differently than it was printed on the official letterhead. He even pronounced it differently than Beatrice had. They were unraveling, and they did not even realize it. They thought they were dominating the conversation. Finally, Officer Ramona went in for the kill. She asked them the most critical question of the morning. She asked who exactly had prepared the legal document. This was where their raging narcissism finally destroyed them. My mother, desperate to maintain absolute control and be seen as the savior of the family, proudly claimed that she had personally drafted the document to protect her son. Winston, however, wanted to highlight his leadership and delegation skills. When asked the same question, he proudly stated that their son-in-law, Harrison, had handled all the technical legal preparations. They completely contradicted each other on a federal felony charge. Officer Ramona just sat there, her face completely blank, and wrote everything down in her notebook. About 40 minutes into the grueling interrogation, the absolute fatal blow landed. It was a twist so perfectly timed it felt like something out of a cheap Hollywood movie, but it was nothing but the brutal reality of their own incompetence. My mother's cell phone, which was sitting on the metal table, suddenly lit up and began to vibrate. The incoming call screen flashed brightly in the dim room. Officer Ramona reached out and clamped her hand firmly over the phone, preventing Beatrice from answering it. My mother's eyes went wide. "That is my son, Harrison. I need to take that. He is very worried about his brother." "You are not answering that phone, ma'am," Ramona said sharply, her tone finally shifting from investigative to authoritative. Ramona did not just block the call. She picked up the phone, unlocked it using the screen prompt, and carefully documented the exact time of the incoming call. She then looked at the specific contact name saved on the screen. The contact was saved under his first initial and his full last name, H.V. It was the exact same name, the identical formatting, the exact same spelling as the registered owner of the home printer hard-coded into the digital metadata of the forged power of attorney. The metadata that Ramona had sitting in her file folder not 2 feet away. The circle was completely closed. The evidence was irrefutable. It wasn't just a miscommunication. It was a fully documented, multi-person conspiracy to commit federal bank fraud, elder financial abuse, and aggravated identity theft. And the real motive, the underlying reason why my family was willing to risk prison for my money. That truth came out months later during the financial discovery phase of the trial. Harrison was not just between jobs. Harrison was drowning in over $400,000 of high-interest, unsecured debt. His luxury lifestyle, the Porsche, the private school tuition, the sprawling house. All of it was financed on a house of cards that was rapidly collapsing. My parents had completely drained their own retirement savings trying to quietly bail him out. They were facing imminent foreclosure on their own home. They were absolutely desperate. They saw my $500,000 trust fund not as my future, but as their personal emergency bailout package. They honestly believed that sacrificing my life to save the golden child was a perfectly acceptable moral trade. Let's pause for a moment. Thank you for staying with me this far. You're truly amazing. Please help me by liking the video and commenting the number 1 below so I know you've been here with me until this point. This not only helps more people discover this story, but also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. Now, let me tell you about the exact moment my parents realized their absolute power over me was permanently broken. I was still sitting quietly in Mr. Thornton's office, meticulously signing the very last page of the new account authorization forms. The heavy glass door of the office muffled most of the ambient sound from the lobby. Then, cutting through the silence, I heard it. It was a sharp, metallic sound. It is a sound you hear on television 1,000 times, but when you hear it in real life, echoing off the marble floors of a bank lobby, it reverberates in your bones. Click, click, the heavy, ratcheting sound of police handcuffs locking into place. I stopped writing. I kept my eyes firmly glued to the desk, but I listened. I heard my mother's voice, but it was not the gentle, trembling, musical voice she had used at the teller counter. It was not the cold, flat voice she had used on the phone at dawn. It was a raw, shrill, utterly terrifying sound of absolute disbelief and uncontrollable rage. "Are you serious right now?" she shrieked, her voice echoing wildly off the high ceilings. "Are you actually putting your hands on me? Take these off. We are his parents. We are just trying to help him. Ma'am, stop resisting and turn around," Officer Ramona's voice commanded, hard as steel. "Winston, do something," Beatrice screamed. But Winston was completely silent. The great insurance adjuster, the man who had spent his life intimidating others with his calm authority, had absolutely nothing to say when he was violently shoved against a wall and cuffed like a common criminal. I did not get up from the leather chair. I did not turn my head to look through the glass. I refused to give them the satisfaction of an audience. I simply picked up my pen, moved to the next page of the legal packet, and signed my name. I made absolutely sure to include the sharp, distinct horizontal dash across the top of the J. By 2 p.m. that exact same afternoon, a pair of police cruisers pulled into the driveway of Harrison's sprawling neighborhood. Harrison and Penelope were arrested in their own driveway, right in front of their wealthy, judgmental neighbors. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the district attorney had formally filed the charges. The list was absolutely staggering. Forgery, conspiracy to commit major financial fraud, aggravated identity theft, and the final nail in the coffin, the submission of falsified medical records to a financial institution, which turned out to be its own separate, incredibly serious felony in our state. Because the digital metadata trail led directly to the IP address of Harrison's home office, he was additionally charged as the primary creator of the forged documents. The truth about Dr. Ainsley Pruitt finally unraveled. The doctor did not exist. Penelope had completely invented the name. She had downloaded a free medical letter template online and paid a random graphic designer on a freelance website exactly $40 to create a professional-looking clinic logo and letterhead. The freelancer, utterly terrified of federal charges, turned his entire email history and payment records over to Officer Ramona within 24 hours. The trial dragged out for 11 grueling months. I attended every single hearing. I sat in the hard wooden pews, wearing a dark green suit and tie that I knew my grandfather Silas would have strongly approved of. The trial revealed even more rot. When the police seized Harrison's home computer, they found evidence that he had used that exact same printer and software to forge 2 other major documents in the years leading up to this. He had forged a commercial lease modification to dodge a massive rent hike on one of his failed businesses, and he had completely forged a signature on a luxury car title to secure a predatory loan. The judge presiding over the case was not a gentle man. He looked down from the bench at my family, his expression radiating absolute contempt. During his final sentencing remarks, he looked directly at my parents and used the phrase predatory exploitation of sacred family trust. He ordered full, uncompromising financial restitution, mandatory interest penalties, and mandated that they pay every single cent of my extensive legal fees. Then he handed down the sentences. My mother, Beatrice, the elegant matriarch who only wanted to help her son, got 6 years in federal prison. My father, Winston, the stoic rock of the family, got 5 years. Penelope got 4 years. And Harrison, the golden child, the untouchable mastermind, got 7 long years because of his previous undocumented forgeries. I was sitting in the 3rd row of the courtroom when the bailiffs moved in to escort them away. My mother stopped. She turned around, her hands shackled to her waist, and looked directly at me. She was looking for something. She was looking for a crack in my armor. She was looking for the little boy she used to manipulate, hoping to see a flicker of guilt, a tear, or a nod of forgiveness. I held her eyes. I did not nod. I did not smile, because there was nothing funny about a destroyed family. But I also did not blink. I stared at her with the absolute, cold certainty of a man who had finally reclaimed his own soul. After a long, agonizing moment, she turned her head, faced forward, and let the guards lead her through the heavy wooden doors. Harrison and Penelope's 2 young children are living with Penelope's parents now. They are good, decent people who have been incredibly kind to me through this entire nightmare. Last December, they sent me a Christmas card. Inside, written in small, careful, trembling handwriting, were the words, "Julian, we are so deeply sorry. We honestly did not know what they were doing. Please know that we are raising these children to know better." I keep that Christmas card in the locked drawer of my desk, right next to the original letter from my grandfather Silas. The trust fund is completely intact. I moved every single penny of it to an entirely different financial institution with a completely different set of corporate protections. I worked with a high-level security manager to add specific, irrevocable language to the account. It now strictly requires a rigorous 3-factor verification process for any change of any kind, ever. Nobody can touch it. I updated my legal files, my medical directives, and my bank accounts. I removed every trace of my blood relatives. I put Felix, my best friend whom I have known since our very first grueling year of nursing school, as my sole exclusive emergency contact. He is not family by blood. He is family by 16 solid years of actually showing up, of holding my head above water when I was drowning, and of never asking for a damn thing in return. I am 37 years old now. I still live in the exact same little solid brick house on Wren Street. I still work my shifts at the cardiac unit. The orange tabby cat is a little older, a little slower, but he still sleeps pressed against the back of my knees. Felix comes over on Sunday mornings. We sit on the back porch, drink strong black coffee, watch the sun come up over the trees, and we intentionally do not talk about my parents. Most of the time. But sometimes, when the silence gets a little heavy, we do talk about them. And I have learned that acknowledging the pain is allowed, too. I want to tell you what I fundamentally learned from this entire ordeal. I am not sharing this deeply personal trauma because I think my story is rare. In fact, since the trial concluded, I have spoken to countless men and women who have lived through their own suffocating versions of this nightmare. I have heard from people whose parents successfully drained their college funds, ruined their credit scores, or manipulated them into signing away their inheritances. I have heard from victims who are still, right this very second, being told by their families that they are too emotional, too dramatic, or too unstable to know what was actually done to them. What I learned is this: when someone sits across from you, looks you in the eye, and tells you in a soft, reasonable voice that they are doing something terrible to you, for your own good, they are explicitly telling you exactly who they are. You must believe them the very first time, not the 5th time, not after 15 years of therapy, the first time. What I learned is that the phrase family first is very often a weaponized sentence used exclusively by people who desperately want to take something valuable from you and need you to remain completely quiet and compliant while they do it. Real family does not require your permanent silence. Real family does not require your submission to financial violence. Real family does not demand your banking passwords. And real family absolutely does not forge your signature on a fake legal document using a public fax machine in a strip mall 2 hours away. My grandfather Silas knew. He knew exactly what they were capable of 16 years before they ever stepped foot in that bank lobby. He set up that trust fund the specific way he did because he had watched my mother operate for her entire life, and he understood her core nature in a way that I, as a desperate son, had consistently refused to. He gave me the money, but more importantly, he gave me the warning. I almost missed that warning because I wanted so incredibly badly for Beatrice to be the loving mother I had desperately invented in my own head. I still talk to Silas sometimes. When I am sitting on the back porch on a quiet Sunday morning, holding a warm mug of coffee, I look out at the yard and I speak to him. I tell him that the trust fund is finally safe. I tell him that I finally stopped making excuses for them and listened to his warning. And I tell him that my name still has that sharp, distinct little hook on the top of the J, and nobody has ever quite been able to copy it. And now, locked safely behind federal prison walls, they never will. If you are sitting somewhere right now, listening to my voice, and you feel that cold knot of anxiety in your stomach because you are afraid of what your own family might do to you, please listen to me very carefully. Stop making excuses for their behavior. Gather your evidence. Lock down your credit. Secure your banking documents. Learn the legal terminology of financial abuse. Write down the dates, the times, and the conversations. Trust that quiet, rational voice inside your head that has been desperately trying to warn you for years. That voice is not unstable. That voice is the only pure, unbroken part of you that they never managed to teach how to stay quiet. Your decency is not a leash you are required to wear forever. You can be a deeply kind, compassionate person, and you can still call the police on your abusers. You can love the idea of a family, and still send the people who destroyed it to a federal courtroom. Because kindness without a rigid, unbreakable spine is just compliance with a much nicer face on it. Have you ever faced something similar with your own family? Have you ever had to draw a hard, unforgiving line to protect your own future? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and never let anyone tell you that you don't have the right to protect what is yours.